Have you ever bumped into your cat outside of your house in the neighborhood? How was the interaction? My ex had two cats. One time I was walking home with her, and we walked past a bush, where I thought I saw a cat in it, so I stopped for a second to check, and out pops the face of one of her cats. I think all three of us were a bit confused for a second, but then he meowed loudly, and walked home with us for the last 5 minutes. It was fucking adorable. I moved house and my cat Fudge escaped out of a window I didn't realize was unlatched. I couldn't find her after that, and I was very worried, because my cat didn't know this neighborhood as we were new there. I was heartbroken, but kept looking for her via flyers and social media, checking vets and shelters, but to no avail. I kept looking for 2 months before my determination began to dwindle. 3 months after the move, it's 9 PM, and I'm walking home from the gym. I about 10 minutes away from my house, but I decide on a whim to take a different path, because it was a nice night and the air felt good after a workout. I'm walking down this new street when, just casually walking out of someone's property, is Fudge. I froze. She froze. I stuttered. She charged at me and leapt up into my arms. I cried like an infant. I carried her home, and she kept nuzzling my ear and purring loudly. So yeah, found my cat who was missing for 3 months casually walking around the neighborhood, and it was one of the happiest nights of my life. Hey guys. All hail Reddit here. Please subscribe. Now back to the video. When I was younger, my outdoor cat went missing for about 2 weeks. He usually came home every night, so we were very concerned and put out a bunch of missing signs and whatnot. Eventually we'd pretty much accepted that he might be gone. One day, I was walking to school, and who do I see? My big fat cat trotting down the sidewalk right next to my house. I was so relieved to see him, and he just acted like he'd never even left. Guess he just wanted a little cat vacation. My cats actually recognize my walk. I'll be walking along the street, hear a bell ringing, and then a little head will pop out a bush. If I bump into them somewhere, they kind of just freeze, stare, realize it's me, then run over. Then they run alongside me home, frequently stopping until I catch up, and making me look like a total weirdo to people that pass. Haha. My cats actually recognize my walk. I'll be walking along the street, hear a bell ringing, and then a little head will pop out a bush. If I bump into them somewhere, they kind of just freeze, stare, realize it's me, then run over. Then they run alongside me home, frequently stopping until I catch up, and making me look like a total weirdo to people that pass. Haha. We've got a driveway now, so it saves them a bit of effort. On my way to my mom's house, I made eye contact through the car window with her cat. He was sitting on top of a wall next to another neighborhood cat. He watched me drive by, but when we looked at each other, and he realized it was me, he slapped the other cat, and booked it back to my mom's yard. I got a call from a neighbor that our cat was in their house. I said I'd be right over, and she explained that she was just calling to tell me if I was worried. It seems that her child was sick, and she'd spent the day with him. I told her thank you, but unless you lock her in, she's free to spend time with whomever she chooses. Please don't feed her wet food, cat food, or she won't leave. She came back sometime that night. I've heard from other neighbors, it seems she had a set pattern: one she'd spend time with on their porch, another in their house on the computer, another gardening. The thing is, she wasn't that friendly of a cat. I bought a small house in London many years ago. I was told a cat, called Ben, came with the house. It was a precondition, and apparently he had been through 3 previous owners. No problem, I thought. Cats are independent. A few months later I'm invited into a neighbor's house and there was Ben sitting on their lounge. I leant over to say, "What are you doing here, Ben?" when they told me her name was Molly. Over the next year I found out she/he had adopted a total of 3 homes, and they all thought they were the owner. Probably explains why she/he was so fat. I did many times with one of our cats. She was a hit at the small convenience store we lived right next to. I cannot tell you how many times I walked in there to buy a soda or something, and there she was, sprawled out behind the counter in the windowsill as content as could be. She would just look at me and meow, and then lay back down, unless I told her to go on home. Then she would glare at me, but still get up and walk back to the house with me. Cashiers there knew she was mine, and so did some of the regulars, but those who were not one of them often looked very confused by the whole thing. When I was little I had a cat named Willow, and he was king of the fucking Pride Lands. I remember seeing him saunter through the backyard dragging a rabbit twice his size with its throat torn open. He was not a cat to be messed with, and most of the time he paid me as much he'd as a piece of lawn furniture. Except once. There was a large woods behind our house, and one day I went back there, because I knew of some blackberry bushes that would be ripe about now, and I wished to partake. On the way back I ran into Willow, who was obviously shocked to find me out of my habitat. He immediately starts meowing at me, rubbing against my legs, running 10 feet in the direction of home, meowing again, repeat. He was convinced I was lost and determined to lead me home. Did that routine the whole way back. Went right back to normal after that, but I'll never forget that underneath all that swagger, Willow was a true bro. This happened years ago. X and I had been going out with his brother and his girlfriend to grab a pizza. X and I round a corner and see our big grey tomcat, Smoke, hanging out by a building. We slowed to a crawl and I kicked at him till he turned around. He saw my window down and sauntered over like he owned the block, launched himself up into my arms and wanted me to hold him like a baby. He promptly fell asleep and we took him back home. He was a great cat. I miss him all the time. I used to have a cat that would follow us around the neighborhood every time we walked the dog. No matter who went out, no matter what time of day or night, she would follow a few feet away, and if we looked back at her, she would stop and look away all casual like, as if she definitely wasn't following us. And then we keep walking, and she keeps following. It was very cute. Another one of our cats straight up hisses and runs away if we tried to walk towards her in the wild. So cats are weird. When I was a junior, cat from our street started coming to my and my housemate's place some evenings and following us home if he saw us out and about. We soon got into a routine of letting him in when he turned up and turfing him out after a few hours. Sometimes we fed him a small amount of tuna. He sometimes just hung out. I once saw him with his real/primary owners, who were, as far as I know, unaware of his treachery. He didn't acknowledge me. When I was a kid, I had a cat named Tiger, an orange tabby. He was awesome. He was a mute, so he couldn't meow or make any sounds at all. So the only way he'd get your attention is by gently nibbling on the back of your ankle. Anyway, he was one of those cats who was free to roam the neighborhood, and then he'd come home at night. Sometimes I'd be out riding my bike with my friends and we'd pass a gas station and just see him sitting by the door outside just chilling and watching cars pull in and out. Sometimes, my mom would send me to the post office, and as I'm taking a walk, I'd pass by wall, and he'd be sitting up there on top of it just watching people go by. He'd always be in the most random places. Every time I'd call his name, he'd leave whatever he was doing and follow me back home. A couple of times I saw him with another cat, and I called him, but instead of following me home he'd give me this look like, not this time. I'm hanging out with this fine feline right here. I'll catch up with you later. He was the best cat ever. Then, he just never came home. I spent a couple of weeks looking for him, and then one of my neighbors mentioned that they had seen an orange cat that had been run over. I went over there to see if it was him, but they had already removed it. So I never really knew what happened to him, but I suspect it was him. Nirin posts. Nobody ever wants to hear this, but it needs to be said. Please reconsider letting your cat go outside. Doubly so if it's into your neighborhood and not your 10 acres of farm. Outside cats live much shorter lives, die much more tragic and painful deaths, invade on other people's property, and wreak havoc on local ecology, especially birds. Cats are perfectly happy as indoor-only animals and way better for everyone that way. One of many good treatments of the topic. This one focused purely on the cat. https://www.pathealthnetwork.com/cat health/cat checkups preventive care/why your cat should stay indoors part I. Here are the replies. Used to allow my cats to go outside until one day one of the cats was acting really cagey with the dogs and running from them at all opportunities because they absolutely would not leave her alone. Thought nothing really of it at first until we found the septic wound on the underside of the cat and brought her to the vet at the first opportunity. Turns out, something outside had bit her bad enough to wound. but not badly enough to be readily obvious, and she'd spent most of the time since hiding out in various corners of the house slowly nursing an infection. By the time we'd found it and gotten her to the vet, it was too late to do anything about it really. Cost us $600 in vet bills to try to save her life, but it didn't pan out. She was such a friendly, gentle, and cuddly cat and the younger sister companion to our other female. The loss hit us all real bad, especially the older female who spent a few months afterwards seemingly confused as to where her friend went and kept searching the house for her. Saw a local cat go through this, had a massive wound on his face get worse and worse. He was basically wild, so we couldn't catch him. Most of the left side of his face was skull and rotting flesh the last time I saw him. If you still see this cat and this is not an old story, look at street cat rescues in your area. They would be able to trap him and provide him with care, though that would quite likely be euthanasia at this stage. This was years ago, so sadly he has passed. That's the end of the video. Please subscribe and stay safe everyone.